Hi, it's Alex Carling, and we're here to do a live Facebook video today on resilience. So I'm going to give those that wanted to attend it live a couple of minutes to join us. And whilst they do, I'm just going to share a few links to the blogs that I've been sharing over the past day. And I've also just had a message from somebody saying that they can't find the live link. Let me just check. So just bear with me. We're just going to wait for people to join. And like I said, just share these links. So it's all there. Right. Right. So the first blog that I shared was, what does it mean to be resilient? Now, if you had your name down on the events page, then I did ask some of you what your thoughts were about this so that I can tailor it a little bit more. But I appreciate that I didn't give you much notice to get back to me. So if you have your own thoughts and your own ideas, then please feel free to put them in the comments on the video. But here's the blog. Hi, Danny, you've joined us. Hello. Hi, Cassie. Right, another blog that I shared then was, turn this off. What influences resilience? So it's okay for us to talk about what resilience means, but then what do we do with it? So this is the next blog. What influences it? And in that blog, we talk about the things that positively and negatively impact resilience, which is quite thought-provoking, really, because I think the things that negatively impact resilience are all around us, so there's no escaping it. So it's about having the awareness and knowing what we can do with it, really, and what other areas, the positive areas, that we can focus on. I also want to share with you my newsletter links. So here's my issue with Facebook, is that I have a group so that I have direct contact with you. However, I really rely on Facebook to be able to give you notifications of links. So, or when I post, so if I've got an offer on, not everyone in the group sees it. So what I do is I've got a newsletter as well. So any content that I share in the group, any offers that I'm running, all get sent to my newsletter. So it's not spam. It's just only relevant things that you'll find useful and things that would be shared in the group anyway. But you can sign up to the newsletter, and then you get all my blogs and my videos and my offers through there as well. So I'll just share that link. And I think that's it. And just because you may be interested, I also have a newsletter for adults as well. So it's nothing related. It's not for your children particularly. It's for you. So if you think that, kind of reading the blogs that are aimed at adults, so things about our own anxieties, our own emotional well-being and things, that all goes in this one. So let me put adult newsletter. That sounds a bit ominous, doesn't it? Newsletter. There you go. Right then. Right, so if you're here, can you give me an indication of how old your children are? Because I'm going to talk right across the board, but I also want to make sure that I kind of tailor it to you, because you're the ones that are here to ask me questions. So, hi, Danny. Danny, you've got 2 children, haven't you? Remind me how old they are. And I've got an example, actually, I hope you don't mind, that I'm going to use of our children playing together as one of my examples for today. Cassie, remind me, have you got your own children? Are you a carer? Are you working with children? And there's someone else watching as well, but you've not. Say hello if you're there and let me know how old your children are. Right, and time for confession. All my notes that I did for today are in my office, and I'm working, as you can see, from home today. So it's very typical that I haven't got them and they're on my desk. I've got that many notebooks, and I have these two here with me, and the content isn't in either. And all it was really was some statistics to back up what we were saying. So I'm missing those. If I go to the office during the week and I've got time, I'll post them afterwards. So Cassie, 10, 8, 5 and 5. Great stuff. Okay. So, and Danny's a young, and we've got somebody else. So if you're here, I can see 4 people watching. Do let me know how old your children are, 4 and 4 months. And let me know actually what you would like from doing this, because as I mentioned at the beginning, I did put a question like, what does resilience mean to you? What is it that you would like from the live in the events? But I didn't give you much time to answer. So if you're willing just to kind of share what you would like from being here today, that would be good. Okay, so I'm going to just start talking about resilience. So I'm going to refer to the blogs that I put. The links are in the comments. The idea of resilience for me is about our ability to remain positive whilst we have difficult situations happening. So amongst adversity, really. And when I say this, I don't mean to not experience any of the negative emotion, but I do find that people that are less resilient, the negative emotions, the negative thought processes seem to be more engulfing, and the processes lend their hand a lot to the black and white thinking that children often engage in, because developmentally they're not able to have that flexibility yet, but even as adults that we engage in it too. So that would be, the all good or all bad. So when something difficult in life happens, the black and white thinking would then be that we just totally switch to life is all bad and we can't cope, and perhaps turn it to about beliefs about ourselves and about us not being worthy. So resilience then is about the ability to be more fluid and go from one to the other and everything in between. So I've got comments like, let's just say that a child is trying out for a sports team. So something that would show fluidity would be, I'm still really sad, but I know that I'll get to try out for the team again next week or next year or next term. So you can see that there's that fluidity, whereas I'm rubbish, I'll never make it. That would be the black and white thinking, and that it would be all engulfing. So it was very defining of the person, to the child, and then their ability. And that might come, so you might have times of that, but it's about being able to reflect and offer them opportunity to see the positives that would help shift their thinking, so that they get the fluidity starts. So another example I was given is that living without somebody. So if someone passes away, that's a really difficult thing for children and adults alike to be able to get our heads around. So being able to say something like, I know that them not being here will leave a big hole in my life, but I know that me living isn't dictated or doesn't solely rely on them being alive. So that you have more awareness of your internal resources, that your life is more than a person. Is this making sense? Let me just see if we've got any comments. Hi Amy, 10 and 2, my 4 kids. Joined. So in the blog as well, we said about mindset as a big indicator. So when we're talking about black and white thinking, and we're talking about our ability to be positive, a lot of the research, when you look at it around resilience, is about how much we engage in 2 parts of our brain. So we have the positive processes and we have the negative processes. And those people that stereotypically would be described as seeing the glass half empty. So they would be leaning towards the evaluating things using a negative process. Being able to see hope enjoyment and gratitude in situations is the ability to engage in the positive processes. Now, the research suggests that it's not necessarily the amount of negative experiences that we have and how they impact us, but it's about how often, in comparison, we engage in the positive processes. So how often we reflect and see the positives, how often we engage in gratitude, how often we acknowledge our ability, how often we acknowledge the support that we've got around us and their impact on our lives, and also our impact on their lives. So the research suggests that the amount of negative processing or situations or life events doesn't necessarily matter so long as the positive processing is higher. Any questions so far? Let me just check. If we tend to rely more on the negative processing, then generally what happens behaviourally is that we seek safety and security. So if you've watched any of the videos that I did on anxiety quite a while ago, if you're part of the Facebook group for parents and carers, you'll find those in the units. Otherwise, they're on YouTube, or you could be able to find them in the catalogue on my page as well that you're watching this. People that process negatively tend to find and seek security. And this leaves us vulnerable because often then what that person is doing, adult or child, is putting their safety or their sense of okayness onto someone else. So we consider that to be an external strategy. So using the external resources that they've got to feel okay and to feel safe. That leaves us vulnerable because we don't always have people there that are able to listen, free to listen, and have the capacity to understand and be able to respond to us appropriately. However, those that are able to have the mindset where they engage more in positivity is that they have a stronger internal resource, a stronger internal ability to self-soothe, to self-validate, to move forward and connect when they do need support. Is this making sense? Cassie, you just left a comment to say that I've just summed up your son. Which part is that? Is that about the relying on other people, or was it the ability to self-validate? Which side was it that you're thinking? Ask me any questions as well as you go along if you've got some personal things that you want to ask. I also wrote, when we spoke in the blogs, when we was what influences resilience, I discussed trauma and adverse life experiences. And if you haven't read that yet, then what I put in it was that it was really important, if you're a parent, if you're watching this as a parent or a carer, is not to engage in the guilt and go with that. I think that, and I hope that by the end of this, you'll understand that adverse life experiences are all around us, and there are a lot that we just can't control. That being said, once we have the awareness that these experiences cause our children some emotional disturbance, that we know what is useful to help build them back up and ground them and validate, and what they can engage in so that they're able to do those things themselves, then that's what we need. That's what our children need us to be equipped with to help them through these life experiences. So I often find that parents want to protect their children from any negative life experiences. And I get it. And as a parent, you know, I really, really fight the hedge sometimes, especially in social situations, to not rescue my child, because I think seeing them in pain causes me pain. However, I'll go on and discuss this a little bit further on as well, is that I think every life experience provides our children with the opportunity to grow and develop and build resilience. When I talk about trauma as well, I often find that parents are quite defended against the idea that there's trauma in their children's lives. And I'm not trying to push this on you, but I think really it's about to raise awareness about what trauma means. Even with the clients that I work with, sometimes, when I say, well, that sounds really traumatic, they find it really difficult to hear. But trauma doesn't have to be big and dramatic. It doesn't have to be outwardly abusive or with intent to hurt. It can be quite subtle, but it can have a significant impact on our development, our ability to belong in relationships, and our ability then to be resilient to other situations. Some of the examples that I've given on the blog is abuse, which is a little bit more overt, isn't it? So that's often the thing that we feel okay to say is traumatic. However, bereavement, separation, bullying, alcohol and drug misuse, and mental health of their own or of a loved one, so as a parent or a carer, that these can all influence development and ability to process then using the positive process system. And again, just refer back to, it's not about us engaging in guilt and feeling bad if, for example, we've separated from our partners or the father or mother of our children. It's more about just understanding that these do create a period of time in our children's lives where they may feel a little bit unstable. And it's, as adults, how comfortable are we with those things? Because if you've separated and your children have been upset by it, how much guilt do we carry? And if we're parents of bereaved children, how much fear do we kind of like carry and parent with when our children are struggling to understand the concept of death, for example, or that they're missing a loved one. And so I think that it's really useful for us to understand what our triggers are, so that we can normalize these experiences and we can see them, as I said before, with the opportunities for growth with regards to resilience and the ability to self-soothe, and that there's skills in reflection and all things like that, and communication. So I want you to think of these life experiences that more often than not we all have experienced in some way, shape or form as opportunities. So not to avoid them. I mean, things like abuse, things that aren't safe are clearly something that we want to avoid. But the other more subtle things that I say don't need to be dramatic or necessarily abusive, but still cause an impact on our children. I want you to be able to think of them as opportunities, so that you start to practice that fluidity. It's not kind of like, oh, what have I done to them? I've damaged them. They should have a family together, because that's not true. And there are plenty of opportunities on the back of that. To give you an example, some of you may be aware that I'm working with our local adoption service. And I think that as I've been applying for that post in particular, but also researching and meeting some of the people that have adopted, what I find really powerful is the extent of some of the trauma that those children that they've adopted have experienced. So we often call that developmental trauma. So difficulties in attachment, abuse, moving, lack of identity, that really do play out behaviourally in the family and cause huge implications to the relationships of the adoptive the family unit, really. And with knowledge and patience and our own ability to be okay with situations and understand our triggers, how successfully adoptive parents move forward and connect with their children. So one of the things that I said that we'd address in this video is whether or not it's ever too late to develop our resilience. And I would say it isn't. Where there's severe trauma, I think there may be a limit to what we can achieve. And when I say limit, I don't mean that we stop developing and stop becoming more aware, but that perhaps what our intentions are, that there may be a gap between what we achieve and what our intention to achieve is. But it's never too late. And I think that our awareness and our internal resources, our communication, our dialogue, everything that I mention in all my videos is a huge part of resilience, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to understand what your ideas about resilience were, because I get the impression that when we talk about it, that it's almost this secret or this unknown entity or concept, and actually you're engaging in it all the time, which is awesome, really, isn't it? It's not something that you need to start learning how to do. It's just about how we frame things and putting everything that you do already in the frame of reference to be like, that's going to have a positive impact on resilience. Any questions? Because I'm going to move on to the things that positively impact our resilience. I do find when I'm talking about things like this that I do have like a list of things to go through, but once I start talking, they all jumble up in my head, and I just come out with all bits and bobs. So I hope you're able to follow it okay. Cassie, you mentioned that your son then negatively seeks comfort. So I'm guessing that what you're saying is that he has quite an anxious part of himself, and then because of that, because it's like internal resources haven't developed enough yet, that he feels safe within himself, that he accesses other people for support. And I'm wondering what age, which of your children, so 10, 8, 5 and 5, what age he is. Let's move on then to the things that positively impact resilience. Go to the blog if you haven't read it already, and do have a read, because there's more things on there that you'll be able to explore. I have picked out 3 things to discuss in this live. So I'm going to discuss emotional security and secure attachment, self-belief, and strong internal abilities, because I think we've referred to those already, and I think that these 3 are quite interlinked. And I think that if I give you some thoughts around these 3, that it will trigger some thinking for you to be able to apply to the others that are in the blog as well. Okay, Cassie, if you want to, once this live's finished and you've kind of had the opportunity to digest it, if you want to send me a message and pad this out with me, then do feel free to. Today is an admin day, so you have me if you want me. Otherwise, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I find it a real push to be able to get back and reply to people. So that offer's there for you if you want to kind of have a little chat some more about it. So let's talk about emotional security and secure attachment then. So as a parent and carer, what we need to provide our children is for us to be the unassailable, safe base. And what does that mean? So we may consider ourselves as always being there, but do our children feel that emotionally, so beyond the physical being there, that emotionally that we are grounding, that we are safe? and that we are reliable. Because I think that what we are saying is that in order to build our internal resources, our external situation needs to be stable. If it isn't, then our internal resources are diverted to managing our external situation. Does that make sense? So when there's calm and when there's predictability, when there's safety externally, then we are free to focus our attention and I guess our energies on development and making sense of the world instead of trying to predict and control it. It's a very different process. As part of that then, so if we're talking about more than a physical presence and we're talking about an emotional one, so that they know emotionally that we're safe, things that you'll be familiar with already then is routines. So having routines means that life is more predictable. And whereas we as parents like flexibility because we don't like to feel that we're stuck, it's worth thinking about routines when there is difficult situations happening. So when there's a transition, for example, from nursery to school or from one school to the next, or moving house, or a bereavement or a separation or any type of change where the child needs to transition, think about the routines, think about the things that you can make more concrete and boundaried that mean that then the child doesn't need to think about those and predict them and take responsibility for them. Things like eating at a certain time, bedtimes, a routine where it's bath, jammers, down for snacks, story time. If they're teenagers, that they know what time they're going to be in, they know that they're supposed to ring you before they leave, that you are going to be out on this day but back at this time. So really explicit routine helps them help soothe the internal system so that they're able to then focus and do the nurturing and the soothing internally and focus on communicating this transition and the process and the things that are coming on the back of that, because everything else is a little bit more stable. Same as strong, clear boundaries helps them know where they stand and takes away any uncertainty. And natural consequences. As I've been doing the work with the adoption stuff, I've been doing a lot of studying around therapeutic parenting. And something that comes up a lot is the idea of natural consequences. And that's something that I think as parents we avoid, or we don't necessarily engage explicitly in them. So I know that children without trauma can often withstand like general parenting strategies, so that you might say something like, if you don't eat that, then you're not having pudding, or if you don't stop hitting that against the TV, then I'm going to turn the TV off. Like, they're more logical consequences, so it's almost like a little bit of a threat. But I think that when our children are experiencing a difficult time and they need that stability and things, the natural consequences is actually a really good way for them to start linking the cause and effect, because the logical cause and effect doesn't always make sense to them. It's more of a punishment and it comes from the external, but the natural consequence is about their impact on the world. So for example, oh gosh, let me think if I can think of one that I've read more recently. Put myself on the spot now. Oh yeah, I don't need to, because this is the example that I was going to give of my little girl playing with my friend's little boy. And we'd gone down for a play date. They'd never met before, so there was really unfamiliar with each other. And he had a balloon, and my little girl had it, I think. I mean, this might be a little bit different to the reality of it, but to cut a long story short, his balloon was very precious, and I don't think he wanted my little girl to play with it. So he was kind of trying to get it back, but in the process, you know what happens with the balloon? It popped, and he was so upset. My little girl was just kind of like, wow, what's happened? And he was really upset. So he sat with his mum. She was, being very the nurturing parent and saying it was okay to feel, it was okay, and she understands, but she didn't take that natural consequence away from him. And so it's about them being able to understand that what I do has an impact on the world and that I have power and I can make things happen. And it allows them then to, can you see how that would develop their internal system to see that it's that things that happen people don't always provide it, that it can also come within. So, what the natural consequence is that he wanted to keep his balloon safe and wanted to keep it away from my daughter, who was a lot younger than him, understandably so. And the balloon popped, so he was really upset. So it helps them think that the next time that happens, something needs to change. Like, if I don't want that to happen again, and that's the link to cause and effect. So if we link this to resilience, then that it allows us to be able to predict more, to understand our strength, to understand our impact, so that we feel that we have more control. If things are just provided to us, we don't develop that notion that we control and we have an impact. Martin, you found it good for you to join us. Let's talk about self-belief. The opportunity to develop skills and to be able to reflect. A huge part of this is play. And whilst you may think that play is referring again to the younger ones, there's some research that was done. Let me just, if you haven't read this book and the stuff that I'm talking about sounds good, see if you can find it. I got this secondhand, and it's an awesome book that helps me just create a bit of content, really, and apply it to transactional analysis, which I studied in. But this book is really, really good. It's a very nurturing style of parenting. It gives you research and to back up everything that it says. But it's priceless, really. It's something that you pick up and put down. It was recommended to me by one of my friends. So in this book, actually, it says that there's some research in Denmark. If that, just in case that's the wrong way around, the Danish way of parenting is what it's called. And I'm not pronouncing the names, I'm afraid, because I can't. But in the book, it says that some research in Denmark about toddlers and about teenagers alike, and that the more they played, the more coping strategies and skills, the more they were able to cope with life, stress in particular it refers to. And the reason for this is that they push their own boundaries. So they get to learn, similar to what we're talking about, is emotional security and secure attachment and ability and natural consequences, is that when the children are swinging off trees and landing awkwardly, or seeing how much they can carry before they drop it and whatever they're carrying breaks, has to come from trial and error, and it needs to come from a degree of freedom. So when you're developing your belief in yourself again and understanding the impacts that you have on the world, that play and being able to experiment is a real useful part of that. And so giving children responsibility as they get older as well, and knowing that they have an impact, that there's cause and effects, there's natural consequences, there's logical consequences at that age when they're a little bit older because they understand. And being able to link these all together builds their internal resources, their self-belief, their ability. So let me link back to if a child is bereaved, or a teenager, or an adult, our ability to understand that, yes, we'll miss them and there's a big part of our life missing, but that our existence doesn't depend on that person being alive. So that it's much more a strong internal and therefore positive way of processing it. Let me see if I had anything. Let's look at strong internal abilities. So this is the third one on the positive impacts of resilience that I'm going to explore. That is the permissions and practice to meet our own needs, so coming from within, which links the past two up, links to what Cassie, you were saying about Martin's calling me a chicken for not saying the authors. I'll put them in the comments for you, Martin. Yeah, so about what Cassie was saying about her son, that he will seek reassurance and safety externally, is that when we're able to give ourselves permission and that we've had practice to soothe ourselves. So the only way that we do that is with interacting, by having the emotional secure attachment and developing self-belief, is that through dialogue, through reflection, through the attachment, that we learn our inner strength. We learn the words to communicate. We know then what serves us well and what doesn't, what makes us feel good, what might make us feel worse. When we feel sad, do we like to be alone, or do we like to go and sit and have a cuddle? Do we like to talk, or do we like to sit in silence? And I think that only when we have the dialogue and we make this a part of the way that to our children do they develop it. And again, a lot of this content you'll find in my other blogs and other videos, particularly on anger and anxiety, which is normalizing all the feelings and the situations that we have in life and helping them make sense of it. You know, my little girl turns 3 next month, and the only boy that she wanted to invite, the boy that she's absolutely besotted with, can't make it. And her little face dropped, and you know, it's like, how do you feel about it now? So she was like, I still feel sad, but I'll have a good time. You know, only because we speak about it and reflect, and we I guess, you know, kind of apply emotions to the characters that are on TV. We, you know, how do you think that they felt? Why do you think they're being so kind? Do you think it was because everyone else was being kind to them, so that you're kind back to other people? It takes time, and we're not always available for it when we're trying to, you know, kind of make tea or look after other siblings and things. But it's about having that awareness, isn't it? And knowing that we do it already as a part of life, but how can we enhance it? And particularly, we don't always need to enhance it, because our children more often than not will develop through these stages. But when they are experiencing emotional instability, emotional difficulty, how can we up the ante? So refer back to the blog for more of the positive impacts on let me just see if I can just have a quick look, because we've still got some time. So we've got some time left because you've been quite quiet. So do feel free to ask me any questions before I leave. I'm just going through to the blog now. So we've got positive valuation of self, so that's self-esteem. Awareness of strengths and weaknesses, that's very much similar to self-belief. Social competency, again, a massive influence on that is play. When children are playing, the things that we offer them through routines and boundaries go out the window, and they develop their social competency by standing on their own 2 feet. Again, natural consequences. Only intervene when you need to. And I think this book also reinforces that in part, if my memory serves me right. So play days, nursery, school, soft play areas, always to be present and be that unassailable safe base, so that they know that you're there, but allowing them to try themselves to develop their social competency. Problem solving abilities, again, that often comes through play, but also through dialogue. Sense of purpose, including religious faith, and humour. How much as adults do we rely on humour? And I think there's a fine line between finding humour and using humour to discount our negative reaction to things, so that it's not about kind of laughing it off as if it doesn't matter, but using humor like you would say, yes, I'm sad, but I'll still have a good time. That's the sadness, the fluidity to the positive and back and forth. You know, kind of being able to be sad and then thinking, oh, but can you remember it? Did you see the look on his face? Or wasn't it funny when this bit happened? It's just that fluidity. So it's the activation of that positive process inside, and how, remember that it's not necessarily, it's not dictated and defined by how much negative is there, but it's how often you can dip into and access the positive. Right, I've got no questions. So does that mean everyone is attended to with regards to questions? Cassie, that offer still stands if there's anything that you want to kind of pad out with me later. I'll just give you a few minutes while I do just see if any more questions come in. I'm just going to write the author in here. 2 authors for Martin. There you go. Danny, that's fine. If you want to email me separately, go for it. Yeah, right. I'm going to leave it with you then. Martin, I've put the authors in. I can say Jessica Joel Alexander, and then I'll leave the other one for you to play with. So thank you for those that have watched, those that dipped in, those that have stayed. Well done. And if you're watching it on playback, then do feel free to comment still, and I will get back to them because I'll still get the notifications regardless. I'm also going to put the link to the Facebook group that we have. I know Cass is part of it, Martin is, Nelly's part of it as well. So it's where we share all the content, anything that I share with regards to blogs, videos, doorbell on cue, all gets put into units. And so things are easily accessible. You can find what you need by just going into the group and going to the units. We've got anxiety, anger. There's going to be one on exams shortly. There's this on resilience. There's the stages of development. So I'll put the link in here, and do feel free to join us. Right, doorbell's ringing, just not going away. So I'm going to go. Thank you again for watching. I look forward to your emails. I'll speak to you soon. All right, bye.